Revenge office stories. The second my boss screamed, "You're finished!" at me, I made a choice. I wasn't going to argue, and I wasn't going to plead. I was just going to give her absolute, deafening silence. She thought it was weakness. She had no idea it was my new weapon. This is the story of how I let my toxic boss's own words become the architects of her downfall and my promotion. Before all the drama, life was just the normal, quiet hum of a corporate job. I was 27, and I felt like I was finally getting somewhere. I was a senior project coordinator at a mid-sized tech firm, a place with enough buzz to be exciting but enough structure to feel stable. And I loved my job. I really loved it. I thrived on the logistics, the color-coded spreadsheets, the whole complex dance of taking an idea and making it real. I wasn't a clock-in, clock-out kind of person. I was the one who stayed late to triple-check everything, the one who'd spot a tiny flaw before it became a big problem. I genuinely cared, and for a while, things were great. I'd handled 2 huge product launches in my first year, and both did better than anyone expected. I still remember our division's VP, Mr. Davison, a sharp, no-nonsense guy, stopping by my desk after one of them. He looked at the final report, then looked at me and said, "This is outstanding work, Sarah. Truly, you have a great future here." That praise was worth more than my paycheck. It was that feeling of being seen, you know? Unfortunately, the one person whose job it was to actually see me, my direct manager, saw things a little differently. Her name was Brenda. Brenda was a master of a very specific, soul-crushing art, toxic management. To the higher-ups, she was all charm and confidence. But to her team, the 6 of us who reported to her, she was a quiet terror. Her toxicity wasn't always loud. A lot of the time it was sneaky. It was how she'd shoot down your idea in a team meeting, only to present it as her own brilliant insight to Mr. Davison a week later. It was the urgent email she'd send at 10 p.m. for something that could easily wait until morning. Just a little power play to remind you that your time was never really your own. I learned pretty fast to be careful. I saw what she did to my colleague James, a super talented and gentle graphic designer. She would literally stand over his shoulder, watching him work, and say things like, "I don't know, are you sure that's the best you can do? It just doesn't feel premium." She picked away at his confidence, thread by thread, until he was second-guessing everything. He ended up transferring to another department, and it was like a light switched back on in his eyes overnight. But honestly, the most frustrating part was her incompetence. She'd been promoted not because she was good at her job, but because she'd been there forever and knew how to schmooze the right people. She didn't get the technical side of our projects at all, so she couldn't give any real guidance. Instead, she'd micromanage the most pointless things. She'd obsess over the font size on a slide while completely ignoring a massive flaw in a budget. We, her team, had to manage ourselves, basically working around her to get anything done. We were a good team in spite of her, not because of her. My relationship with her was a constant tightrope walk. My work was good, and the results were visible, so it was hard for her to attack me directly without looking stupid. Her jabs were more subtle. She loved backhanded compliments in group meetings. "Sarah did a great job on this report," she'd announce. "It's amazing what you can get done when you have so much free time." It was a dig at me being single and not having kids, trying to paint my hard work as just having no life. I'd just give her a tight, professional smile and say, "Thank you, Brenda. I'm glad the team's hard work paid off." I always said the team's hard work. It was my own small, silent rebellion. The beginning of the end was a project called Nightingale. It was the biggest project of the year, a complete redesign of our main software. It was huge, and I was the one running point between all the different teams. It was my baby. I'd written the first proposal, spent months laying the groundwork. Everyone knew I was the one holding it all together. Mr. Davison had even started calling it Sarah's project. And that's what did it. Brenda couldn't stand it. She couldn't stand that something so important was so clearly my success. not hers. She started crashing every meeting, usually late, derailing everything with questions we'd answered weeks ago. She demanded to be CC'd on every single email, creating a huge bottleneck because we had to wait for her approval on tiny decisions she didn't even understand. She was trying to rewrite history and make herself the leader of the project. We were all getting so frustrated, but I just kept my head down. The project was too important to let her ego sink it. I worked later, I worked harder, and I kept everything moving. My competence was shining a spotlight on her incompetence. I didn't realize it then, but I wasn't just building a project. I was building her gallows. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. You could feel the pre-launch tension in the air. We were 3 weeks out from the go-live date for Project Nightingale, and the pressure was on. We just finished a final review, and it went perfectly. We were on schedule, under budget, and the feedback was amazing. There was this real buzz of success in the room. As the meeting wrapped up, Mr. Davison made a point of saying, "Excellent work, everyone. Sarah, the execution on this has been flawless. Keep it up." I was beaming. It was almost a year of my life's work. As I was walking back to my desk, my mind already buzzing with the final to-do list, I saw Brenda marching towards me. Her face was a thundercloud. She walked right past her own office and cut me off in the middle of the open plan floor. My office. Now, she hissed. The shift from the positive energy of the meeting to the sheer hostility coming off of her was dizzying. I followed her, my stomach twisting into a knot. She didn't close the door all the way, a classic power move, making sure everyone could hear if she raised her voice. "What was that in there?" she started, her voice shaking with anger. "I'm not sure what you mean, Brenda," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Don't play dumb with me," she snapped. "The way you talk to him, acting like this is your project. You have been insubordinate and undermining me from day one." My mind was racing. Insubordinate? I had done nothing but my job, working my butt off to make her department look good. "Brenda, my only focus has been making Nightingale a success," I said calmly, but my heart was starting to pound. "Your focus," she spat, "has been on making yourself look good at my expense. You go around me, you talk to leadership behind my back. You think you're so clever, don't you?" She took a step closer, her face twisted in a way I'd never seen before. This was the raw, unfiltered Brenda. "Let me make something crystal clear," she said, her voice getting louder. She pointed a shaky finger at my face. "I am the manager. This is my project and my team. And I will not be made to look like a fool by some arrogant little coordinator who thinks she can run the show." I just stood there, my hands clasped behind my back to keep them from shaking. I said nothing. I just looked at her. My silence seemed to make her even angrier. She needed me to cry or argue, to give her rage something to feed on. I gave her nothing. And then she said the words that changed everything. Her face was turning a blotchy purple. She took a deep breath and just screamed. The sound was so ugly and loud in that little room. And I knew everyone outside that cracked open door heard every word. "You are finished here, Sarah. Finished. I will make sure of it. When this project is over, you are gone. You are replaceable, and you will be replaced. You're finished." The words just hung there. And in that second, 1,000 emotions hit me at once. Humiliation, fear of losing my job, and just pure, white-hot anger. Every part of me wanted to fight back, to list every single one of her screw-ups, to scream back that she was the incompetent one. But then another thought cut through all the noise, crystal clear. Asterisk don't. Don't give her the fight she wants. Don't give her a reason to call you unprofessional. Asterisk. So, I made a very deliberate decision. I said nothing. I held her gaze, my face a complete blank. I just focused on my breathing, letting my heart rate settle. I just stood there in absolute silence. She stood there, panting a little, waiting for a reaction. Tears, begging, yelling, anything. She got nothing. My silence was a vacuum, and her rage had nowhere to go. It was like she'd thrown a punch and hit thin air. Her anger started to curdle into confusion, and then a little flicker of panic. My stillness was something she hadn't planned for. After a few seconds that felt like an hour, she just sputtered, "Get out. Get back to your desk." I turned without a word and walked out, closing the door gently behind me. I walked through the dead silent office, feeling everyone's eyes on me. I sat down, took a deep breath, and opened up the project Nightingale timeline. My silence wasn't just a defense anymore. It had just become my weapon. The vibe in the office right after that was so weird. The whole floor had gone quiet when Brenda screamed, and now it was just the sound of nervous, hesitant typing. No one made eye contact with me, but I could feel them looking, a mix of pity and fear. Brenda stayed in her office with the door shut for the rest of the day. She'd fired her cannonball and was now hiding, probably expecting me to write a resignation letter or a furious HR complaint. I did neither. Instead, my first move was to open a new, password-protected document on my personal laptop. I titled it BL Chronology. I wrote down the date, time, and exactly what she said. "You are finished here. You are replaceable." I noted that the door was ajar and that team members were in the office. Then I started working backwards, documenting everything. Every time she took credit for my work, every passive-aggressive comment, every urgent late-night email. I dug through my sent folders and chat logs, gathering the digital breadcrumbs. This wasn't about feelings anymore. This was about data. The next morning, Brenda came out of her office acting disgustingly cheerful. She totally avoided my desk. If she needed something from me, she'd ask someone else to ask me. "Can you ask Sarah to send me the latest budget report?" she'd say to my desk neighbor. It was pathetic and childish. It was also a gift. I switched up my own strategy immediately. From then on, every single communication with Brenda would be in writing. If she asked me a question out loud, I'd politely say, "Of course, I'll email that right over." And then I'd send a perfectly professional email. "Hi, Brenda. As per your verbal request, attached is the budget report. Best, Sarah." Each email was polite, efficient, and created an undeniable paper trail that showed I was being cooperative and professional. I BCC'd every single one to a private email address. My silence, combined with my perfect performance, started to drive her nuts. She couldn't accuse me of being emotional or insubordinate because everything I did was by the book. My work on Nightingale continued without a single issue. I hit every deadline and solved problems before they even got to her. My competence was making her threat, "You are replaceable," look more and more ridiculous every day. So her tactics changed. If she couldn't attack my work, she'd try to sabotage it. This was her next phase. It started small, like accidentally double-booking a meeting I was supposed to lead. The most blatant attempt came about a week before launch. The marketing team had a final, critical change to the ad budget, which was decided in a meeting between Brenda and the head of marketing. I wasn't invited. Brenda forgot to tell me. Her plan was obvious. Let me move forward with the old numbers, which would cause a huge budget screw-up on launch day. It would be a public failure, and she could finally say, "See, I told you she couldn't handle it." But Brenda had forgotten one thing. By trying to isolate me, she'd actually forced me to build stronger relationships with everyone else. I had a coffee scheduled that morning with Mark from marketing, all set for the ad push next week. I asked casually. Mark frowned. "Yeah, we're just locking in the numbers from the new allocation. Brenda was supposed to send you the updated sheet yesterday." I kept my face perfectly neutral. "Ah, must have missed that email. Could you forward it to me? Just want to make sure I'm working off the latest version." "Sure thing," he said, tapping on his phone. A second later, it buzzed. The email with the new spreadsheet was right there. Time-stamped. Sent from Mark to Brenda 24 hours earlier with the instruction, Please ensure Sarah gets this ASAP. I felt this cold, clear sense of victory. I now had undeniable proof that she was actively withholding information. This wasn't just incompetence, it was sabotage. I replied to Mark's email, CCing Brenda. Thanks, Mark. Got it. Brenda, just confirming I have the updated numbers now, and we'll get it all implemented today. Thanks. The message was clear. I know what you did. Her only response was total silence. It's amazing what people will do when they feel threatened, isn't it? If you've ever had a boss who tried to sabotage you because they saw you as competition, do me a favor and hit that like button. It's a silent signal that you totally get it. And make sure you're subscribed, because you're not going to want to miss how this all comes crashing down. Brenda was starting to look like a ghost in her own department. Her attempts to sabotage me were backfiring, and she was alienating herself from the rest of the team, who saw exactly what was happening. She'd snap at people over nothing. She was a coiled spring, and the big pre-launch presentation to the executive board was the thing that finally made her snap. This was the final checkpoint before Nightingale went live. The audience was the C-suite, the CEO, the CFO, and Mr. Davison. As department head, Brenda insisted on leading the presentation and building the entire slideshow herself, using our data. She locked me out of the file. I was only allowed to attend as a silent observer. The day of the presentation, Brenda looked awful. The polished mask was gone. She had dark circles under her eyes and was clutching a stack of note cards like a life raft. It started off shaky. She was just reading from her cards, her voice flat. She was presenting our work, but it was obvious she didn't understand it. She'd click through slides full of complex data and just give these vague, superficial summaries. The executives weren't stupid. They started asking questions. Brenda, the CFO asked, on slide 12, you're projecting a 15% increase in user retention. Can you walk me through the data that supports that number? Panic flickered in Brenda's eyes. I knew that number inside and out. It was based on a 20-page report I had written. Brenda had clearly only read the one-sentence summary. Well, she stammered, shuffling her cards. That's a projection based on the synergistic value of the new UI and marketing. It was complete corporate nonsense. The CFO just leaned back, looking unimpressed. The final blow came from Mr. Davison. He was staring at a graph showing projected server load. Brenda, this projection seems low. What's our contingency plan if the server load is 50% higher than this? Total silence. Brenda just stared at the slide, hoping an answer would magically appear. She had no clue. She looked at her cards. She looked at the CEO. Her face was turning pale. After about 10 seconds of the most painful silence I've ever experienced, Mr. Davison's eyes moved across the room and landed right on me. Sarah, he said, his voice perfectly calm. You did the initial risk analysis, didn't you? Can you shed some light on this? Every head in the room turned to me. Brenda shot me a look of pure hatred. This was her worst nightmare. I stood up. My heart was pounding, but my voice came out steady. I looked right at Mr. Davison. Yes, of course, I started. That projection is the median expected load. We modeled for peak scenarios. If the server load exceeds 80% for more than 10 minutes, we have an automated system that scales back 3 non-essential background services, which reduces load by about 20% with no impact on the user experience. We also have a cloud scaling solution on standby that can double our capacity in under 5 minutes. We're well prepared for a launch day spike. I sat down. The silence this time was different. It was the silence of understanding. I hadn't been emotional. I hadn't said, Brenda should have known this. I didn't have to. I just calmly answered the question. The contrast between her fumbling panic and my quiet confidence was absolutely devastating. In that moment, everyone in that room saw the truth. They saw who really built the project. Brenda didn't say another word for the rest of the meeting. She just sat there looking small and defeated, as the executives started asking me all their questions directly. That presentation was the tipping point. The problem with Brenda wasn't a secret anymore. It was on full display for the entire executive team. The next few days were tense. Brenda was a dead woman walking, and everybody knew it. She basically hid in her office. Meanwhile, the team and I were laser-focused on the launch, and without her interference, we were working better than ever. About a week later, I got a calendar invite from a senior HR manager. The subject was just check-in. No other context. But I knew. This was it. The night before, I prepared. I didn't plan some big, angry speech. I printed my evidence. I printed the email from Mark about the ad budget, proving she withheld information. I printed the email chains showing me professionally responding to verbal requests she later denied making. I printed out my whole timeline of her behavior. I put it all in a neat little folder. My case wasn't going to be about my feelings. It was going to be about her actions. I walked into the HR manager's office. Her name was Carol, and she had this calm, perceptive vibe. She started with small talk, then got serious. "Sarah," she said, "we've been made aware of some friction within your team. Can you tell me about your experience working with Brenda?" She was testing me, waiting to see if I'd launch into an emotional rant that she could just dismiss. I took a breath. "Carol," I said, my voice steady, "I think my work on Project Nightingale speaks for itself. My goal has always been to deliver the best results for this company. However, there have been some communication challenges that created significant risks to the project." I opened my folder. I calmly walked her through it, piece by piece. "For example," I said, sliding the email from Mark across her desk, "here's a time where a critical budget change wasn't communicated to me, which could have led to a major error if I hadn't confirmed the details myself." I showed her the one-sided email chains. As you can see, after a difficult conversation, I decided to document all project communications to ensure clarity. My goal was to de-escalate any personal conflict and maintain a professional record. Finally, I told her about the "you're finished" incident. I didn't raise my voice. I reported it like I was reporting a server outage. "On this date," I said, pointing to my notes, Brenda informed me that I was finished at the company. I chose not to engage or escalate. My primary responsibility was to the project and the company. So I stayed silent, continued my work, and trusted that my performance would be the ultimate measure of my value. Carol listened to everything, looking from my face to the documents. She saw the pattern. She saw the sabotage, the petty behavior, the unhinged threat. All of it contrasted with my meticulous, documented professionalism. I hadn't given her a personal complaint. I had given her a clear-cut case of managerial misconduct with a paper trail. "Thank you, Sarah," she said finally, her voice firm. "You did exactly the right thing. By not reacting, and by documenting everything, you've given us what we need. Thank you for your professionalism." I never heard the exact details of Brenda's last day, but I heard whispers that she was called into a meeting with Carol and Mr. Davison. I heard that when they showed her the evidence, my documents, her failure at the presentation, and reports from other team members who finally felt safe to speak up, she exploded. She yelled. She cried. She blamed me. She blamed everyone. She basically performed her toxicity one last time for the only audience that mattered. She proved to them that everything I had silently documented was the absolute truth. Later that afternoon, we saw her walking to the elevators with a small cardboard box, flanked by a security guard. She didn't look at anyone. She just stared straight ahead, her face completely blank. And then she was gone. A new kind of quiet fell over our department after Brenda left. Not an anxious quiet, but a peaceful one. It was the calm after a long storm. People were smiling more, chatting by the coffee machine. The cloud of anxiety that had been hanging over us was just gone. We launched Project Nightingale, and it was a massive success. The launch was flawless, and the first week numbers shattered all our goals. It was a win for the whole team. Proof of what we could do when we weren't being actively held back. About 2 weeks after the launch, I got another calendar invite, this time from Mr. Davison. Congratulations and next steps. I walked into his corner office, the one with the great view. He greeted me with a huge smile. Sarah, he started. First, congratulations on Nightingale. It's a phenomenal success, and we all know who was at the heart of it. He leaned forward. I also want to apologize. The situation with Brenda, it never should have gotten to that point. We should have seen it sooner. But what I want to commend you on is how you handled it. In my 20 years in this business, I have rarely seen that level of professionalism under that kind of pressure. You didn't just let her implode. You protected the project while she did it. I felt my heart swell. That was the validation I'd been waiting for. We're restructuring the department, he continued, and we need new leadership. We need someone who understands the work, who has the respect of the team, and who leads with competence, not ego. He paused. We want you to be the new project management director, Sarah. The job is yours if you want it. I was floored. Director. That wasn't just Brenda's old job. It was 2 levels above my current one. It was the job she had probably wanted for years. The irony was so thick I could almost taste it. The woman who screamed that I was finished and replaceable was gone, and I was being offered her dream job because of how she tried to destroy me. I took the job. My first act as director was to get my team together. I didn't gloat or even say Brenda's name. I just said we were starting a new chapter, one built on trust, transparency, and doing great work together. The look of relief on their faces was the real reward. The best revenge wasn't sitting in Brenda's old office. It was turning the toxic space she created into a place where people felt safe, valued, and empowered to do their best work. Brenda made a critical mistake. She looked at my silence and saw surrender. She mistook my calm for weakness and my professionalism for fear. But silence isn't empty. My silence was full. It was full of observation, strategy, and the quiet work of gathering facts. In the end, I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to scream back. I just did my job exceptionally well, and I let her own toxicity do the rest. Her rage was a fire, and my silence was the mirror I held up to it, letting it burn no one but herself. She thought she was writing the end of my story, but all she did was write herself out of it. Thank you so much for listening to my story. The world of work can be a crazy place, and sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one with the most power. If you have a story about overcoming a toxic boss, please share it in the comments below. Let's build a community of support. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories. Stay strong and always know your worth.